Hello, this is KiwaniTalk. My name is Ray Scaboria. I'll be your host for this evening's program. KiwaniTalk is a public information program brought to you from the facilities of WDHS at Dearborn High School by members of the Dearborn Kiwanis Club and students that help us with the recording the programs. Tonight, we are very pleased to have with us Mary Hollens, the Director of Fish and Loaves in Taylor.
Yeah.
Mary, it's so nice to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me. This is my second time on, but Kiwanis and the Kiwanis members have been so helpful to Fish and Loaves. So happy to be here.
Okay. Mary, give us just a little of your background, just a little nutshell, and then when you started at Fish and Loaves, just give us a little of that.
Well, my background is in fundraising, high net worth individuals. I've worked in higher ed at Wayne State, Lewis College Business, and other institutions. Came to Fish and Loaves, which started in 2008, and I've been there about 3.5 years as executive director.
Okay. Well, I know your job is one of those jobs that has many different responsibilities.
Oh, yeah.
But we were talking before the show, and I said like the president of a university, one of the major jobs is finding out how to raise money, or how to keep the money coming in, to keep the activity going.
Right.
And now, if you would like, you could mention some of the volunteers that you'd like to recognize, donors that you'd like to recognize.
Well, I'd like to recognize the Kalina Foundation. They've been extremely helpful, as well as the Ford Fund. They have just been extraordinarily supportive of Fish and Loaves in terms of funding, volunteers. Masco has been exceptional. Beaumont Hospital, Humana, so many others. I hate to even say it because I don't want to leave someone out, but we've just had great success with people in the corporate and individuals who have supported us. Fritz Enterprises, they've been great with us. Load One, they've been such a big supporter of us. 2 Men in a Truck, just a number of people in the community and outside. Taylor Chevrolet and others have just been extraordinarily generous with us. And then Wayne Wayne Community Action Agency, they've been extremely supportive to us as partners, along with Forgotten Harvest and of course Gleaners.
Yeah. And some of the partners are, besides being maybe donors, fund donors.
Correct.
They also there's many donors that donate in-kind items like maybe transportation at times.
Well, that's 2 Men in a Truck. They provide in-kind transportation for us because we receive food donations from Providence Hospital. And we would not have the wherewithal to go up there once every other week and pick up that. But because of 2 Men in a Truck, in Brownstown, they make that pickup run, bring wonderful foods in to Fish and Loaves for us. And then DTE, they've been an exceptional sponsor and supporter. Our last conference on hunger, it was funded by DTE. So there's just been some exceptional support, and so many individuals, I wouldn't want to mention their names without their permission, but individual supporters have just been a tremendous asset to the organization.
Well, of course, I kind of look at you as my employer, so to speak, my volunteer employer, because my wife and I do work down there on Monday morning.
Right.
But I've learned a little bit about the operation. Like there's a number of donors of food from the area. That what it would be, it's food that has to be culled from a regular store.
Right.
Because it needs to be sorted and so on. And for a while, I worked in the clean room where they do that.
Right.
And so I kind of got a feeling for that's an ongoing project. And there's some people that are very dedicated. That it's kind of a certain system you got to follow.
Tanya.
Wear the hairnet and all that sort of thing.
It's very attractive, but people will do that for us. They are very dedicated. Pat and Tanya, they work in our clean room along with others. We receive food from Gordon's in our area, which just really makes it easier for us to meet the nutritional needs of people who are in need in our community. So food insecurity, nutrition insecurity, those are continuing issues.
Well, for a couple of years, I've been working out in front where the food is packed into the carts.
Right.
And my job has been loading the produce onto the carts. And of course, the food that's sorted in the clean room is brought out there, and then people have the option of taking an item or two, depending on how much there was that day.
Correct, and sometimes we don't know how much there's going to be there, but whatever we have to distribute to people, we give out about 1,600,000 pounds of food annually, but we couldn't do any of that without our volunteers, without our really strong board of directors that we have, and people like yourself and Jane who just come selflessly to support Fish and Loaves is just a tremendous asset.
Well, it's actually fun.
Well, it is fun.
It's fun to do. The volunteers are very, I'd call them a pretty close group. They're all very friendly with each other and get along real well. There's very little friction, I would say.
I think the people it's a wonderful way to volunteer. You meet new people. You know that you're needed. You know the work is important. We've had people that have been there since the inception of Fish and Loaves, since 2008, and we have people who just started a couple of days ago. Yeah. And they're all able to work together for the common good and to really support ending food insecurity in our area. And people who are hungry, we provide them with food at no cost. So
I don't know if this is quite right, but I understand it was a group of churches that were the initial motivation to start.
It was a group of churches that came together to start thinking about how they could address hunger. It was right after the 2008, what we call the Great Recession.
Yeah.
Lots of companies were closing and manufacturing was getting to be more scarce in our area, and a lot of people actually lost their jobs, or they had to go from 2 incomes perhaps to 1 income, and that was the genesis of Fish and Loaves. What could people do? What was needed? And rather than having many of the churches take on that by themselves, they decided to open a client choice food pantry, which has been a big success and really helps support people. It's not the only answer, but if you can have food, then sometimes that allows you the space to pay a bill, to travel back and forth to work, those sorts of things.
Yeah, the thing about food is if you have the food, it does free up some other source of funds, and people there's some bills you just got to pay.
You have to pay, and also when you have families, senior citizens, individuals, lots of young families, and the nutritional needs of a child or a teenager, they have to be benchmarked and met. There's no do-overs if those children don't receive the nutrition they need when it's age appropriate. And actually, hunger does not have a zip code. It exists throughout many, many communities, so we're able to address some of those issues.
Let's go through the basic qualifications for our client to be to receive food from Fish and Loaves.
Well, generally they have to live in one of the 7 communities that we serve, which is Allen Park, Brownstown Township, Dearborn Heights, Taylor, Romulus, Southgate, Woodhaven. Those 7 communities, those major, of course Taylor, those major communities. We also partner, 50-50 partners with many churches, organizations, so those churches can make a referral to us. And also we accept referrals from 211. If somebody is calling about food insecurity or food need, many times we'll receive those referrals. But generally with the church and those organizationals, they may provide at least $50 per month to us to help support Fish and Loaves, and then they will make referrals to us. And then we also offer emergency food. Sometimes people just need a little bit of help. And so to be able to come in and get emergency food, that's a great help to lots of people. We've had people in domestic violence situations where they leave with practically nothing. They may need emergency food, and we're able to help them with that.
Okay. And, a regular client, once they're qualified as a client, they can come, it's every second month?
Yeah, every second month, and there is an income level, so they have to meet that. It's not for the very wealthy. It's for people who are probably low income, and I might have mentioned this the last time. Sometimes people don't have any income, or people that are transitioning out of homelessness, or perhaps they are homeless at that very time. So we try to make sure that income level is verified, and also that they live within the community that we serve, our primary service area.
Yeah. Usually our food pantry serving almost any community. If you look for them, and there's a list. A lot of times the churches have a list, like, as you know, I also work in
Correct.
Cherry Hill Presbyterian Church's food pantry, and we always have a list of the other food pantries that are in the area. And food pantries don't discriminate against when you got food last.
No, they don't. You can,
So you could maybe go to food pantry A this month and food pantry B next month
Right.
if there was need. you
Right,
know.
and really it's a safety net for people who
Yeah.
really, some are suffering from hunger and some have long-term food insecurity issues. And you're right, you can do that. We do ask people that they have updated ID, but other than that, it's not that many requirements for somebody to get food.
Yeah. What one of the points I was going to make
Yes.
is it's not to people's advantage to be driving too far, because it
Correct.
costs money to drive around. you
So
know.
if you can,
So
yeah.
it's best to go to the food pantry that's geographically closest to you.
Yeah, and they can
y-
call
your residents.
They can call 211, which is a United Way resource line. They can
Yeah.
call that 211 number, and they can let them know about food resources that are in their area, close to their neighborhood. And many times transportation is an issue, so that sort of mitigates that for people.
I believe Fish and Loaves has a list like that.
Yes, we do.
And as I mentioned to you before, the Cherry Hill Church also has a list like that. That's the first thing we give to people when they become a new client, so they know there's some other options if they need them.
And
you
many
know.
times people don't know and they're not aware, so providing them with a list or giving them alternatives or options, it helps them. It really does.
Let's talk a little bit about produce.
Okay.
Produce adds so much to a food pantry.
Yes.
And it's usually the typical items that keep pretty well most of the time, especially if they're refrigerated.
Sure.
And and I didn't know this today, but explain where they come from.
Well, we receive produce from several sources, from Forgotten Harvest. They're a food rescue organization, and they'll provide us with fresh produce. We have Gordon's that also donate some of their produce to us. And then during the summer months or the growing season, we'll have farmers and gardeners also donate produce to Fish and Loaves. If they want to, we can give them a tax deduction sheet for them if they want to take that off their taxes. But it provides produce for families that really need it. And we've all heard, and there's a little trend now, rather than telling people, oh, you're only going to have fresh produce, no other things, we're encouraging people to just add that produce to your diet. It's very helpful to people. It's very helpful to young people and children.
It's a lot of vitamins you get from produce.
Yes.
Especially salads, greens, and things like that. And people, a lot of people don't eat enough.
Yeah,
produce.
well, sometimes it's hard to access it because sometimes the items are a bit bulkier,
Yeah.
hard to carry. So if they can come to Fish and Loaves, and all the produce is given to people, just like you were saying, the volunteers add that on automatically to them, so they'll take that with them. And then we've been part of the Healthy Pantry Initiative, so we'll have a slant board with produce or corn or whatever we would have in, and they can help themselves to that. There may be, they can't take 10 of every item, but for the produce and many things, they can get a lot of that produce, and it doesn't count against how much food they take with them.
Mary,
Yeah.
we're with Mary Hollens, the director of Fish and Loaves.
Thank you.
And we're going to take a short break, Mary. Please join us again right after this short break, and we'll talk a little bit more about how Fish and Loaves functions.
Thank you.
It's easy to get caught up in the details. The day-to-day grind, numb to the noise, going round and round and round. Deep down, there's something missing, a void inside, a hole to fill, a life lacking. Then, in a minute of clarity, it hits you. The the aha moment. You're needed. Kids need you. Kids of all kinds. All these funny, rambunctious, sweet, attention-seeking, vulnerable bundles of energy. They need your love and support. Some have huge life hurdles. Poverty, disease, hunger. And they're reaching out for you. Around the corner, around the world. You are a Kiwanian at heart, a role model, a guide, a builder of dreams. Together, we are Kiwanis, passionate and strong, ready to move mountains or grains of sand. Imagine every child reaching their potential. The power to help is in you. It's not about us. It's about them. Do you hear the call? Kids need Kiwanis. Kiwanis needs you.
Hello, I'm Ray Scaboria, and we're here with Mary Hollens, the director of Fish and Loaves, located down in Taylor,
Yeah.
on North Line Road, about a half mile west of Telegraph, on
Yeah.
the north side.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
And Fish and Loaves is in one of the row complexes.
Correct. Light industrial, yes.
Yeah, and it's almost right across from the golf course, just a little bit west of the golf course
yeah,
entrance.
Taylor,
Yeah.
yeah, Taylor Golf Course. Yes, we are.
Well, Mary, I had said that I'd like to talk a little bit more about the produce, because produce is a major add-on
Yes.
to the shelf, you know, to the canned food and so on, the packaged food. And we were talking that you have several sources. Why don't we just mention
Well,
the sources again?
Forgotten Harvest, which is a food rescue organization, and I
Yeah.
believe Forgotten Harvest also has farms, so they can have a bit of the farm-to-table produce that we
Okay.
receive.
Okay.
We also receive produce from gleaners. We receive produce from Gordon's and other sources, gardeners, farmers that are in the area. If they have extra, they'll also provide that to Fish and Loaves.
Yeah.
So,
And, you know, as the one that puts it on the cards, that's my job. It's always interesting to me how it's packaged. Very often it's broken down into, you know, 8 or 10 potatoes, or, you know, 8 pounds, 10 pounds of potatoes, or maybe if it's oranges, there might be 8 or 10. And sometimes they're in net bags. They're in quite sturdy bags. And that's probably done in the Gleaners or Fish and Loaves system.
it's done in both Gleaners and Fish and Loaves. We'll have volunteers come in, and we may get a tote full of oranges or boxes of oranges, and we can't always give somebody a case of oranges, but we can give them a dozen oranges, 10 oranges, so they'll have the citrus fruit. Similarly with apples, sometimes we'll have potatoes that are donated already tied up in a regular bag, and we can give those to some of our clients. But the produce is really important for the nutrition. It's important for the children. It's important for our seniors. We have so many people that have come in and said, you know, I have a health concern. My doctor, nurse practitioner has said, I need to eat more fruits and vegetables. So they can access them from Fish and Loaves, and that's a big help to lots of people.
And I noticed, being down there, there's literature right on the wall encouraging people to think that way. Right when you come in
Oh, yeah,
to the office, there's some information there about produce, and to try and encourage people to take advantage of it.
Yeah, and we also know that everybody is not familiar with utilizing all types of produce. So we do have a food demonstration at least once or twice a week, where somebody will take food that we have readily available on our shelves, or the produce that we have, and they'll prepare it so people will know, oh, that's what I do with a rutabaga, or this is what I can do with squash, or I can mix the fruit in with a salad, or this is how I use these particular greens, or maybe we get kale in, and everybody's not a proponent of kale, but they want to know, how can I use that? So we try to give people ideas of how to use the produce and maximize it for their families.
Yeah. We just last week or maybe 2 weeks ago we had a lot of butternut squash.
Yes.
And butternut squash is delicious.
It is.
It doesn't need anything. Just the squash cooked. It doesn't. You don't need butter and salt. You can put that on if you want to, but it tastes great just by itself.
Well, we just we like to let people know that they can do that, and thus the cooking demonstrations. But also, many times you'd be surprised people don't have all of the equipment. If we ask people, do you have pots, or do you have a stove? Do you just have a microwave? So we try to make those adjustments because everybody doesn't have all the components that you might assume they would have in their kitchen to cook that. So that's why we try to give them different options and ways of how to manage that produce. And being able to cook at home is really a cost saver. I know one of the chefs that works with Gleaners and Cooking Matters, I asked him, I said, Chef, what's the one takeaway that we can have? He said, cook food at home. It's less expensive. You'll have more control over what you eat and what you have in your diet for you and your family. So we try to work along those premises. Yeah.
There's a lot of vegetables that cook fine in a microwave.
Oh, yeah.
And so a lot of the microwaves have a button that says vegetable on it. You press that, and it'll do a pretty good job on it.
Yeah, and
it'll be edible.
It's very edible, and we also partner with the National Kidney Foundation, and they've provided us with some of those things to help people, like flexible cutting boards and measuring cups and things that they could, and vegetable scrubbers. So all you have to do is scrub the vegetable. You can cut it a little bit, and you can steam it, put it in your microwave, or use it, as you want. Yeah.
And if there are children in the family, they can learn about cooking also.
Oh, yeah.
They can do some basic things like scrubbing the potatoes and stuff like that, and then learn the rest of the process.
That's right.
And it can be kind of fun. You can make it fun.
And
make it a little bit of a game,
Yeah, and it's really good to introduce children to that, and they are very cognizant of what they're eating. When you see children in the food pantry, there are certain things that they'll want or they'll pick out, and lots of times it's fruit. And they, I want some grapes, or can I have those bananas? So they are cognizant of things that they want from the food pantry that are healthier options.
One of the ladies was saying her grandchildren like corn on the cob. And they get the little things that hold, that you can twist the corn with, and then there's some melted butter to roll it in, a little salt, and it becomes it makes something to do as well as eating.
That's right.
It's an interesting thing for children.
It really is. So we really want people to be able to have access to the produce. That's why we have so much of it. We're also going to create a produce club so that if when we have an abundance of produce and we know that we're not going to be able to utilize it all within a week or within 4 short days, then we'll call people, text them, and let them know if they desire that, and their clients, they can come and pick that up. Yeah. So
there's something. This is me talking, but there's certain things that that people need to have a little training in, And one, for example, would be like making soups. Okay. And it's not that it's all that hard, but there's a process, and you got to, especially soups with the dried beans or split peas or lentils. Those soups are delicious, but it takes a little while.
Yeah, the other thing too is if we provide the recipes. We had some split peas that were golden in color rather than the traditional green that I'm used to seeing. And people were wondering, but once we put the recipes out, color picture of the recipe, what people had to do, and then people were taking them because it had the recipe, easy to follow, how to make soup with it, how to use them in salad. So yeah, people need the information and education around that.
And the thing about dried vegetables like that is they keep almost indefinitely, as long as you keep them in a dry place and protected. So you don't have to rush home and cook them tonight. You can do it next week or next month, And also, if you, my wife makes delicious split pea soup.
I believe you.
But she takes and freezes it in single portion. It's just the two of us, and she's not fond of it, so I eat it all. But she has it in single portion containers in the freezer, so I can pop one of those out. It's 5 minutes to defrost it, and it's ready to eat, and that, boy, is that a tasty lunch.
It really is a good lunch, and that's one of the things we're doing. We're doing cooking matters at Fish and Loaves. We're doing produce pop-up giveaways for people so that when we have extra produce, we can distribute it to those people who are in need. It really increases the access. And I would encourage anybody that's interested in food insecurity and nutrition insecurity to support Fish and Loaves. We're not the only organization. We have great supporters, as I said, Masco and the Ford Fund and the Fritz Enterprises and Load One and Humana, both my others. But support your own organization, support your community, because there really is a need within all of those communities for fresh, nutritious food, and we're able to supply that, and a little bit goes a long way.
Can I mention Dorothy?
Sure, yes.
Is our sweetheart down there, our
Yes, she is.
95-year-old sweetheart. And we have a break room, and every day she comes in, she brings something for the break room. It's usually brownies or some cookie or cake, but she manages to find time to prepare that every day before she comes.
And that's not her only. At 95, I think she has 2 other volunteer gigs that she's involved with at her residence, managing that co-op, as well as with ChristNet. So she is really active for 95. She's a go-getter, she really is. She's wonderful.
She is. Well, Mary Hollens from Director of Fish and Loaves in Taylor.
Yep.
We have about a minute and a half, and is there anything you wanted to mention? Well, let's mention, if say somebody wanted to volunteer. I think we described where we are.
Well, they could actually go to volunteermatch.com, put in Fish and Loaves, and it's going to populate with all the volunteer positions that we have. They can do that online if they want to do that. We have volunteer orientations every Monday at 11:30 and every Thursday at 11:30, and those are just open, so you don't have to make an appointment. You can just walk in at 11:30, learn about Fish and Loaves, and sign up to volunteer. So either of those 2 things work very well.
You'll get a tour with a description of how things work, and you won't learn everything, but you get the gist of it.
You'll get the gist of it and understand,
And it's such a friendly place to be working.
You really can't overstate that. It's a wonderful way to connect with your community, meet people, and do something that's really worthwhile and valuable. Volunteerism is just a wonderful way to live your life, helping others and supporting things within your community, whatever you might choose to do.
Well, Mary Hollens, we've about used up our time, but I want to thank you very much for coming on KiwaniTalk.
I hope you have me back.
People can also donate to Fish and Loaves if they wish.
They can donate to Fish and Loaves. We have a golf outing coming up, and we have a 5K on June 9th, golf outing September 14th at Taylor Meadows. So ways to help.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you for joining us on KiwaniTalk. Join us again soon.